The ruling didn't land. The tariff decision, the event you were actually afraid of, was delayed. It wasn't rejected. It wasn't approved. It was kicked down the road. At the exact same time, Kevin Hassett from the National Economic Council explicitly stated, even if the Supreme Court rules against them, they have alternative legal tools ready to achieve the exact same goal immediately. But because the hammer didn't drop on Monday, you did something dangerous. You exhaled. You ignored Hassett's warning. You didn't analyze the plan B. You just felt better. And in that moment of relief, the misread began. At first, the waiting felt neutral. You weren't buying. You weren't selling. You were just watching. It felt disciplined. But then, the timeline shifted. The news wires confirmed. The U.S. Supreme Court is expected to issue rulings on Wednesday, January 14th. Now, you have a specific date, a specific target. But look at how your brain processed that date. You didn't start preparing for a binary event on Wednesday. Instead, your brain quietly marked the days between now and Wednesday as a safe zone. It stopped feeling like a temporary pause. It started feeling like a smart position. You told yourself, nothing is going to break before Wednesday. In the absence of a crash today, you started confusing time passing with safety building. Then you looked around for confirmation, and the headlines seduced you. You see A16Z raising $15 billion, the largest haul in VC history, specifically for American dynamism and defense infrastructure. You see Bank of New York launching tokenized deposits on their own ledger to mobilize collateral. The numbers are massive. The machinery is loud. That is when the analyst voice in your head tries to speak up. It tries to remind you that $15 billion is a bet on the next decade, not safety for next week, but right now. You aren't listening to the analyst. You are listening to the survivor. You look at that A16Z capital raise, and you tell yourself, if the smartest money in Silicon Valley is betting $15 billion on growth, the system can't be breaking. If BNY is putting deposits on chain, crypto must be safe. You aren't looking at that news to judge the economy. You are looking at it to validate your inaction. Then comes the silence from Washington, the strategic ambiguity. The Clarity Act is under discussion. The Greenland talks are framed as necessary dialogue, not conflict. The White House is signaling negotiation instead of war. Nothing is finalized, but nothing is canceled. There is no deadline. Or rather, there is Wednesday, January 14th. But notice your reaction. You aren't hedging for a loss on Wednesday. You are waiting for a rescue on Wednesday. Normally, pressure forces a decision. But when the laws are stuck in the drafting phase and the geopolitical tension is hidden behind closed doors, your brain stops looking for the exit. You stay in the position a little longer than planned. You postpone the reassessment. You tell yourself you will act once the dust settles. This is the most subtle trap for the sophisticated mind. You look at the other players. The sovereign wealth funds aren't liquidating. The home builders are rallying because rates just dropped to 5.99%. The VIX is comatose. So the feeling of responsibility doesn't sit fully on your shoulders anymore. It spreads. You whisper to yourself. If this was really dangerous, the bond market would react first. If the institutions are buying the dip, why should I hedge? This isn't logic. It is comfort. You are letting the silence of the crowd sedate your own risk management. But diffusion of responsibility doesn't reduce risk. It just makes it easier to stay still, while the risk accumulates. This brings us to the moment TMS actually lives in. Not the big trade, but the micro habit. It's the moment you open your app, See the portfolio as flat and close it again. It's the moment you don't hedge, because Hassett said they expect to win anyway. You tell yourself you are still just waiting for Wednesday. But something has changed. You are no longer neutral. You are invested in the delay. You are making an active bet that January 14th brings clarity, not chaos. You are betting that the alternative legal path will be benign. But you don't call it a bet. You call it patience. That is the rationalization. No one says, "I'm gambling on a court ruling." They say, "I'm looking through the noise." What makes this dangerous isn't panic. Panic triggers survival instincts. This is dangerous because of how reasonable and managed it all sounds. The president orders a bond buyback. Mortgage rates drop to a 3-year low. The system feels under control. So the story your brain tells you is calm. The adults are in the room. They are fixing the housing market. They are funding defense. It feels like maturity. And because it sounds reasonable, it doesn't trigger any alarms. But reasonable is not the same as safe. Sometimes, reasonable is just what uncertainty sounds like when it gets comfortable. Nothing forced you to stay exposed today. No regulation demanded it. No Supreme Court ruling confirmed it yet. You stayed because, for a few quiet weeks, doing nothing started sounding like the smartest thing to do. And that is the only thing you need to notice, not the market. But the moment your brain stopped asking questions, because the answer felt easy to live with.